So this is the story of how my son, Hersh Goldberg Poland, was kidnapped. The story actually starts, from my point of view, on October 4th, which was a Wednesday. Hersh told me that he was going up north, for a music festival that was going to be taking place in the north of Israel from October 4th until Sunday, October 8th. And he left the house with his big backpack, and I thought I wasn't going to see him again till Sunday. But on Friday, late in the day, he called and said, "You won't believe it, the police just came. The organizers didn't have the right permits to have the music festival go through the weekend, so they closed it, and I'm heading back down to Jerusalem. But the good news is I can go with you and the whole family to synagogue Friday night," because Friday night, it was now October 6th, and Friday night, October 6th, was the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah, which is when we finish reading the whole entire Torah, the first part of the Old Testament of the Bible. It's the 5 books of Moses, and we roll the whole Torah, the whole scroll, back to the beginning, and it's a really festive, joyous holiday because we start the cycle of reading the Bible, the Torah, all over again. So he said, "I'll be able to go to synagogue with you and the whole family," and we were going to be going to good friends of ours for dinner Friday night. Afterwards, we were going to walk there from synagogue, and he said, "I'll join you for that as well." So we were happy that he was coming home, and he said, "I am going to bring my backpack with me because after dinner, I'm going to go meet Aner." Aner was one of his best and closest friends, and we're going to go do something fun. He came home late in the day Friday, he showered, got ready, and we walked to synagogue. My husband, John Hersh, and my 2 daughters, Libby and Orly, and we went to services at our synagogue, and everybody danced with the Torah. It's a really joyful community holiday. And then we walked to our friends for Shabbat dinner, and we ate outside on their balcony. It was a really beautiful evening, and Hersh was telling us stories about being in Europe this past summer. He had gone for 9 weeks to 6 different countries to go to 6 different music festivals. He is wild about music festivals, specifically trance music. That's his favorite kind of music. And he was telling us all these fun and exciting tales about people he met from all over the world. And at around 11 o'clock, he got up, he kissed me, he kissed John, and he turned around as he was leaving in the doorway, and he said to me, "Love you, see you tomorrow," just very casually. And that's the last time that I saw Hersh in person. Morning, October 7th, early in the morning at 7:30, my husband left, John left to go to synagogue. I was going to join him a little bit later with the girls. It was around 8 o'clock that the sirens started to go off, bomb sirens in Jerusalem, which is quite unusual. So I ran to wake up my daughters, and we got into our bomb shelter, which is in our apartment. New buildings in all of Israel are required to have bomb shelters inside the apartments, and some of the older buildings have bomb shelters either on the ground floor or in the basement of the building. So the girls and I got into our bomb shelter, and we waited 10 minutes, and we didn't hear anything. We didn't hear any explosions. We didn't hear anything that sounded questionable or concerning or dangerous. And so we came out, and normally I don't use my phone on the Jewish Sabbath, on Shabbat, but because this was a case of life or death, I knew that Hersh and his friend Aner were camping outside somewhere, and I knew that somewhere rockets were falling, and that's why those bomb sirens were going off. So I turned on my phone it was just around 8:20, and 2 WhatsApps popped up that had been received at 8:11, 2 in a row at 8:11, to the group that I have just with Hersh and John. and Hersh had written, "I love you," and "I'm sorry" was the second message. So right away, my throat closed and I knew something terrible was happening to him or about to happen to him. I knew something terrible was happening to him or about to happen to him. I tried to call him and it rang and rang. I wrote him 3 texts in a row saying, "Are you okay? Let me know you're okay. I'm leaving my phone on. Let me know you're okay." But obviously I never heard back from him. What we came to find out is that when the massacre began at the Nova Music Festival, which is where the boys were at, that massacre began early in the morning around 6:30 or 6:45. Ultimately, the Hamas gunmen who were there killed 367 of those young people. Hersh and Aner and 2 of their friends ran to a car when the massacre began, and they tried to escape in their car. The problem was that there were gunmen lining the roads, and they were shooting at point-blank range through the windshields of everyone coming toward them who was driving. So there was a massive traffic jam of cars filled with dead people. The car Hersh was in ended up making a U-turn to try to escape to the south, even though ultimately they were trying to come back north to get home. They went south, and that's when there were massive rocket attacks, and rockets were falling and bombs were falling. So all of these young people who were trying to escape the music festival, there were about 3,000 people at that music festival from all over the world. People had come, and the people left their cars and went running into roadside bomb shelters, which is what Hersh and Aner and the 2 other kids who were in the car did. And they squished into a 5-foot by 8-foot bomb shelter with 27 other people from the music festival. So there were 29 people total in this very small space. Hamas came to the opening of the bomb shelter and was tossing in hand grenades, which Aner Shapira was standing in the doorway, picking them up very quickly and throwing them back out, which is really remarkable because I have since learned that from the time you pull the pin on a hand grenade, you have 4.5 seconds until the hand grenade detonates. But Aner valiantly and heroically was able to pick up and toss out 7 of the hand grenades that were being tossed in. There's actually footage from a dash cam recorder that you can see the hand grenades being tossed in, and you can see that they're being thrown back out, and that was Aner's doing. Unfortunately, on the 8th one, when it was in his hand, it detonated and it killed him. And then Hamas came and was throwing in more hand grenades. 3 more hand grenades went into this small space with all of these young people smashed together, and they exploded, causing a lot of carnage. And then the gunmen came to the doorway and were spraying the room with machine gun fire. So most of those young people were dead, and several of them were trapped underneath the dead bodies, and they are the ones who we spoke to who told us and shared with us what happened, which is that after a couple of minutes there was a lot of dust and smoke, and it was very hot in the bomb shelter. The dust kind of had a few minutes to settle. Hamas gunmen entered, and there were 4 boys slumped against the wall who were wounded but clearly alive. They couldn't pretend that they were dead. So the people who were under the bodies, who pretended they were dead, told us what they saw. And the young people who were wounded were ordered to stand up. And that's when all of the witnesses we spoke to told us that they saw that Hersh's arm from the elbow down on his left arm had been blown off. that he had somehow tied some sort of bandage around the wound in those couple minutes when the dust was settling. And they were marched out of the bomb shelter and put on a pickup truck which headed in the direction of Gaza. And they were marched out of the bomb shelter and put on a pickup truck which headed in the direction of Gaza. We know that Hersh's last phone cell signal was detected at 10:25 in the morning, Saturday morning, October 7th. A week later, we were being interviewed by Anderson Cooper on CNN, and at the end of the interview, when we told him everything I just shared with you, he said, "You guys, I'm going to call you now." And he called us and he said, "I didn't want to say anything while we were live on TV, but I have actual video footage of Hersh's abduction." And we were shocked. He explained that he had been doing a documentary about the Nova Music Festival, and while he was at the site of the music festival, he also went to visit the different bomb shelters that were nearby where so many of the young people were abducted from. And there were Israeli soldiers who were in the area still cleaning up and looking for any evidence they could find, and they found a GoPro camera that had fallen off of the helmet of one of the gunmen, and they shared that footage with Anderson Cooper's team. And while we were being interviewed by him, it was a split screen, and they were showing, CNN was showing photographs that we had given them of Hersh pre-October 7th, just so that people could see who Hersh is and what he looks like. And while we were being interviewed, Anderson Cooper recognized Hersh from the video he had seen, and he realized while we were talking, but he didn't want to shock us and hurt us live, so he waited and he shared that footage with us. And so we then ended up being able to see Hersh being marched out of the bomb shelter. And so we then ended up being able to see Hersh being marched out of the bomb shelter. He does walk calmly. He's certainly in shock, I'm sure, and traumatized. And, you know, his sense of calm is probably just that he was really so much in shock. And he gets himself up onto the truck with his right arm, which Hersh, like I am, we're both left-handed. And it's his left arm that was blown off at the elbow. And you can see once he gets onto the pickup truck, when he turns to sit down, you see the stump where his arm used to be, and you can see jagged bones sticking out right below the elbow, and you can see that he's wrapped something around it. And that's the last visual that I have of Hersh. And since then, we've been living on a different planet, a planet of constant agony and terror and trauma. And we just are running every single day, running to the ends of the earth to try to save Hersh and the other remaining 133 hostages who are still trapped in Gaza in captivity. To try to save Hersh and the other remaining 133 hostages who are still trapped in Gaza in captivity. Those people still represent 19 different nationalities. They are Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. The youngest hostage is just over 1. His name is Kabir, and he had his first birthday in captivity in January. He was kidnapped when he was 9 months old. And the oldest hostage is now 86 years old, a grandfather. And there were 45 young people kidnapped that day who were at this festival that was called the Festival for Unity, Love, and Light. And we know that 3 of them were luckily released at the end of November when there was the first hostage deal. But there are still the remaining 134 hostages Tragically, we know that many of them are no longer alive, and we know that every minute matters, and we feel that this is a global humanitarian crisis, and we want the world to have courage, to encourage our leaders to have courage, and to encourage the negotiators to have courage, and to do the right thing, and to do the human thing, and to bring these people home. Their lives have been stolen from them for all of this time. They've been stolen from us, and time has been stolen from us. We are still frozen on October 7th. Nothing feels normal, and we're in constant misery and fear. And that's our existence, all the families of the hostages. And that's the story of how my son, Hersh Goldberg-Polin, ended up being a hostage. He's 23 years old. He's an American-Israeli civilian who was dancing at a music festival and had his life stolen from him. And I hope that the next time that I tell you his story, he'll be sitting next to me and can tell you the ending himself.